How to teams with planned project work concurrently with solving new cybersecurity production priority crisis, risk issues taking up roughly about 30% of the team's capacity with solutions during the sprint or a Kanban board. So basically that question is about planned versus unplanned work. That means you plan for the work on a Monday morning, but on a Wednesday you have new stuff coming in, right? There are one or two ways of handling this from my experience. One, and by the way, there isn't one approach that is better than the other. It just depends. Both of these come at a cost. It just depends on which cost you're willing to accept. So here's approach number one. The same team builds it, they ship it, they deploy it, and they maintain it. That means you own the whole thing. This is your baby until the death of this product. Now, this will come at the cost of you being a little smart about how you balance your capacity every sprint. That means, let's say you say 80% of our capacity in the sprint is going to be dedicated to planned work. The remaining 20% we will leave just in case something comes up. All right. Now, just in case defects come up or this last minute crisis pops up, you have 20% capacity. The problem though is, how do you predict that it's only going to be 20%? It can be 25%, it can be 30%, can be 10%, right? So it's difficult to predict. One of the ways of how you can get better at predicting that time is with data. So you go through a few mistakes and you get a pattern of those mistakes, and then hopefully you can predict better. Another option would be that you just save 20% no matter how much work you get at the last minute. If you get 20% work, great. If you get more, then you have to swap something out. Now, if you swap something out, your sprint fails. If you get less than 20%, that means you plan for 80%, but no defects showed up. So you have 20% capacity remaining. You don't want to add more work to fill that 20% capacity. This is a big local optimization a lot of new teams will experience. The reason why you don't want to add more work is, now pay attention here, the rate of evolution of your scope needs to complement the rate of consumption of that scope. In Scrum, there is this concept called product backlog refinement, right? It's an ongoing activity where you're adding more work into your backlog, you're slicing and dicing it to make it better. The rate at which you're doing that rate needs to complement the rate at which you're pulling from the backlog also. Because if the rate at which you're adding exceeds the rate at which you're consuming, you end up with a very long product backlog, mismanaged expectations from the client. Or if the rate at which you're adding is less than the rate at which you're pulling in, then you end up in those sprint planning sessions that go on and on and on, those long and boring sprint planning sessions. They're usually a symptom of shallow product backlogs or shallow scope of work, right? So if you have 20% capacity remaining, then you don't pull in more work, but you go back to whatever you're already doing and think about optimizing that. So refactor that, automation, think about making that better, or maybe invest in some education, do some self-service stuff, learn a new skill or something like that. The reason why you don't want to mess with that scope is at the end of the sprint, you want to end up with whatever you said you would do. If you do more or you do less, you are not a very trustworthy team, and it's difficult for everybody else to predict whether you will deliver every time you say you deliver or not. So remember, doing more work is also not a great idea all the time. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It depends on what kind of problem are you solving. If I, as a customer, I'm banking on you to deliver 10 things, you should deliver 10 things, not 15, not 8. Deliver 10 things so I can trust you over time. Because if you can get better at building trust over time, then you can predict the same thing over 10 months. But if you can't even be trusted for 1 month, then why would I trust you for 10 months? Right? So think about that the next time you want to take in more work in the middle of the sprint. Am I becoming unpredictable over time? That's the idea there. Right? That's one option. Second option is easier option. It's more costlier, I guess. You stand up a production support team. One team does active development, another team does active production support, which means they will do the crisis management. This will come at the cost of standing up this extra team and ramping them up as your team ramps down, which means sprint over sprint, as you're doing your work, make sure in your sprint review, this new team is brought in as a stakeholder. So in your definition of done, make sure the production support team or this crisis support team has given you a check mark that yes, we are good with handling this if and when we get an issue. And so as you're ramping down, they start to ramp back up, right? So two options. One, stand up a separate team, ramp them up, pay that cost. Or second, the same team does all of it, balance capacity between 80-20, 70-30, that sort of a thing.